Hello, this is Axis 0096 with my second video of the beginning of my one-year war mythos series. Continuing a subject by, request by Andy Animations, shout out bud, for speculation on side 3 and the pre-war political and social climate. There were quite a few things going on. A lot of fans may or may not totally understand. Before the one-year war even began, before even Sion Soon Daikon was murdered, there were numerous anti-Federation resentment going, pretty much fueled by many atrocities. The Federation would pretty much try to cover up things as random as theft to as dangerous as, as outright blatant as murder. I mean, Zeon, I can tell you this, the Federation 3 security force, which would later become known as the Zeon military, they were no different. But the colony residents chose to, in the policy of I believe in the lesser of two evils, or the lesser of two devils. And I prefer to deal with the devil that I know close it on this hand, as opposed to this hand with the Federation. That was how things were up until UC 0058. And things just continued to go worse. As most people know, by that time, before the one-year war broke out, for some reason, the Colony Public Corporation had ceased building colony projects. Many of the older colonies were at least a century old and in dire need of either A, repair, or B, just being replaced. And of course, they weren't going to get any of that done. So they were basically being neglected. So of course, people were pretty resentful. During this time period, numerous things were going on. Most notably, the transition from traditional ship-to-ship and plane-to-ship combat between 0079 and 0068, or whenever Chars dad was murdered. We transitioned from purely radar indicated targeting to interference targeting. You basically had to line up something in line of sight with your mobile suit and blow them out of the sky. The reason for this is the development and the discovery of a particle known as the M particle, or the Minovsky particle, discovered by Dr. Tiaskovsky-Minovsky, a Russian scientist. Originally, he worked for Psionic, but as most fans know, over the course of the war, he switched sides to the Federation. And, of course, he was killed on the lunar surface, however, not before helping his protege, Tim Ray, with his development forward of the V project. Now, of course, I'm just touching on many things. There were quite a few avenues for mobile suit development and other things going on. At the same time, political pressure was at a boil and a fever pitch. There were demonstrations in the streets, literally, the day Sion Soon Daikon was pretty much assassinated. Colony 3, Munzo basically didn't want the citizenry to have any say in elections. So they used the insurrection, as it will, to topple their rival faction, the Rawls family. The only survivors being the old man and Ramba Rawl, who would later become known as the Blue Giant, pilot of the infamous MS-7B Goof mobile suit. One of Amuro Ray's greatest rivals, second or maybe third only to Chars over the course of the 1-year war. But that's a video for another time. That guy has some serious history to cover. And I intend, like a lot of the Gundam pilots and or civilians that have priority in the Universal Century, I will cover them in some form. Moving on, basically Chars and his sister, well, at this time, Casval Rem Daikun and Artesia Som Daikun were basically orphaned. They had to flee to Earth because they knew the security forces would try to kill them. Any surviving kin of Daikun was a threat to the regime they were attempting to instill in Munzo. So, Ramba Rawl and his lover, Haman Crowley, basically snuck them out in an antiquated gun tank. I think it's an RX-44 mass-produced model, one of the earliest mobile suits. Now, this is according to the origin storyline. People can quote me on this if they don't believe it or not. Now, of course, during this fight, Char made an interesting quote. He said, his sister asks, "Who are they?" "Our enemies," he responds. "My enemy, your enemies, everyone's enemies. And I'm going to take them out." A 10-year-old child, driven and blinded by rage and hate, decides to make a lifelong stand to fight for a cause he believes in, however, not realizing that this is the dawn of an age of bloodshed that will stretch for many centuries. And unfortunately, the Red Comet's going to cut a very bloody trail. Needless to say, young Char, or Casval, has no idea the carnage he's going to start, and he won't live long enough to see it come to fruition, unfortunately for him. I intend to do this video series kind of glossing over some subjects, but when I find some serious topics to cover in depth, I intend to do it pretty regularly, at least more than once a week. This is part 2 on speculation of the pre-war era, stretching from UC 58 to UC 0077. During this time period, as I stated, Char's father had, I'm going to recover this, Munzo's head, Casval and Artesia's father were murdered. There were revolutionaries that were attempting to overthrow any regime for colonial rule. They failed. However, the Zabi family took this as an opportunity to topple their rival Raw faction, basically to seize absolute control. Casval and his sister are forced into hiding alongside their mother. Char and his sister fight their way through the streets of Munzo on their way to the security port. That way they can escape to Earth. And this is just the earliest parts of the era. There are many things yet to come. And I'll end this video by saying this: who will survive?